What's up, everybody? My name's Mike Sjogren, here with my co-host,
Emanuele, Pani.
We're part of a group of specialized real estate investors you've probably never heard of.
We didn't start with deep pockets or wealthy families, and we don't rely on 401ks, mutual funds, or traditional real estate investing.
In fact, many of us don't even own the properties that fund our freedom. If you ask the money experts out there, they'd say what we do is impossible, yet it's happening every single day.
It's happening through a new niche called short-term rentals.
We are Short-Term Rental Nation, and these are our secrets. What's going on, STR Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Short-Term Rental Secrets podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sjogren, here as always with my main man and brother from another mother, Mr. Emanuele Pani. What's going on, E?
My brother, so good to see you. I feel so grateful. Life has been so good to me lately, and just like things are moving. I am like super focused and locked in. So I just appreciate that season of life, when that happens. And I've always woken up early, and I went through a stage that was more difficult for me as life was going through seasons of it. And what's funny is like when you're in a groove, life wakes you up. And so I had that moment today, right? Like my first time my eyes open was like 1:30 in the morning. I was like, this is a little early to wake up. I might go back to sleep. But my alarm goes off at 4:30. And I woke up at 3:50 today, and I was just like, okay, let's go. Like, let's go play. You know what I mean? Because again, like, and this is what I want for people. And like, this is what the purpose of life for me is, right? It's creating a life where you're like, are so excited about what you're doing and what you're up to that like just life drags you out of bed. And really keeping that as a key indicator of whatever life is good or not, right? It's such a simple way of knowing, because again, like I give the example of like going on vacation. How easy it is for you to wake up at 3 a.m. when you're going on vacation. No problem, right? You're excited. You're like, oh, I'll get up. I'm ready. You're giddy. And what is like in your day-to-day life. And again, like we don't want to live life for a vacation. And this is one of the quotes that one of our guests said, is that you don't retire from your dream life. There is no need to, right? So it's like, how can we create that every day, every week, and just create a life that you're not escaping from? You don't need to retire. How can we do that? And so I feel myself in that groove, and I haven't felt that in a while. So one, I recognize it, I appreciate it, I'm grateful for it. And then it's just like seizing it, right? Like really seizing the moment of like when you are in those moments of life, just reducing time to action and just flow with it. Like understand it, appreciate it, don't question it, just attack it. So I feel super, super grateful. Yeah.
Love that,
What
man.
about you? Yeah.
Yeah, man, I feel good. For the listeners out there, if you haven't joined the free Facebook group, I highly encourage you to do it. Again, it's free. We're doing live trainings in there every single week. I'm recording a course that will just live in there for free for you guys. And this isn't like some BS course. Like this is legit that I'm really excited about to teach you guys this whole framework that I use anytime I build a business, especially a short-term rental business, that to build it in a way that actually gives you the lifestyle that you want and really focus on the time freedom and how I think through and build all my businesses. So I'm really excited for that. But yeah, man, the podcast that we just did, I always love talking to this person. It's been a minute since we caught up. We text fairly regularly. Every couple months we'll do a check-in text, whatever. But it's so cool. And I feel like you feel like this when you talk about my story, because you saw me before I got into all this, right? And I was making that transition. And I remember this guest, we went to a mastermind event together. He had just joined the mastermind. It was like a week into it. And we drove back from Montreal to Boston together, like 5 hours. And I just saw like the desperation and like the change that he wanted to have. And seeing to where he's gotten to now is just so freaking cool, man. Being this huge podcast host now, interviewing some incredible people from, Tim Grover, Jesse Itzler, Grant Cardone, like Rich Knoll, all these like huge names, and just like owning it and just being in his flow and creating a life that he doesn't want to escape from. I mean, the dude lives in the friggin' Dominican at this point. Like he literally lives in paradise. So really excited for you guys to hear this show, because I think it's going to help pull out and give you a 30,000 foot view of getting clarity about why you're building this business and what are you really going after to live a life that you actually want to live for yourself and for your family. So, but before we get into it, we got a winner from last week, right?
Oh yeah. Tristan Hunt is our winner for this week. And then again, guys, We love giving back to you guys. All we ask is for you to take a couple minutes just to write us a review, and then you will keep announcing winners every week. You get a bunch of SDR swag. You get a coaching call with me and Mike. You never know what you're gonna win, so just go ahead and do it, and you can send it to support at SDR Secrets. Every week we're gonna announce somebody, and so yeah, we appreciate you, Tristan. Thank you so much for being a listener. And yeah, do you want to get into the show?
Yeah.
Because
And
it's
again, just E and I are on a mission we've got some internal benchmarks that we want to hit for this podcast. And the only way for us to do that is one, to continue bringing you guys great guests and great content. But when we get more reviews from the listeners, it really helps bump us up in the algorithm. And it helps us attract bigger and bigger guests and just keep bringing you fresh content. So again, if you could take 30 seconds, leave us a review, send a screenshot of that review to support@sdrsecrets.com. Every week we're picking a winner to give you guys some cool stuff. It's just a thank you for taking that time to take 20 seconds out of your life and leave us a review. So again, appreciate you guys. And now let's get into the show with Mr. Jamie Gruber. All right, STR Nation, we have a very special guest today. Somebody that E and I have known a long time, and somebody that I've looked up to, man. Somebody that, was doing the corporate grind, making good money, and had enough, and drew a line in the sand and said, I'm not going to live like this anymore, and completely, really reinvented himself and took complete control of his time, his destiny, and somebody that you're going to get a ton of value out of today, Mr. Jamie Gruber. Jamie, welcome to the show, man.
Good to see you guys. What a nice intro. Look up to me. You've met me, man. I'm like 5'7". Nobody looks up to me. My kids, for now.
Yeah. Yeah.
for now.
But for the listeners, again, I feel like I'd be doing a disservice if I was just reading your bio. So I would love for you to just take a couple minutes and just share your
Yeah.
journey going from that corporate world to, like I said, really reinventing yourself and being hyper intentional with your time, your freaking location, like everything, man.
Yeah. So I, like you said, former corporate exec in the year 2000. I was 21 years old. I take this corporate gig as a claims adjuster, not something most people grow up dreaming of being, but I was good at it, made a good living. I got promoted quickly and kind of moved up through the ranks. That was in New York. '08, I moved to Boston, where you are, and take a larger job. And then in 2017 to Michigan for an executive job. And that was the job, right? The $400,000 a year, corner office, bonus equity, the whole nine. It was a big job, big pay, where I thought I was destined to be and what I thought was going to make me happy. And I swear to you, within 30 days of getting the job, there's a honeymoon period. You make the move, you're in a new state, you have a new boss, you're the big guy now. I hated it. And this is the same company, by the way. So it's not like the company changed or I moved in any way like that. It was just, I realized at that point, like, oh my God, all this sense of unfulfillment that I had over the last 6, 7, 8, 10, maybe even the entirety of my career there, which was 17 years up to that point, that I thought would be solved by getting the dream job, like where I deserved to be. Complete opposite. I always say that was around the time that my authentic self finally elevated and went over to my ego and said, look, man, you've been driving this ship for 30 some years. Look at him. He's miserable. It's my turn now. And when the ego gets challenged, it's not like he just steps away. So that year and a half after that move, I was in a deep depression, a deep funk. I didn't know what to do. How do you get out of this job? My wife is stay at home. I've got a kid. We're going to have another one. I've got a mortgage. My whole identity was wrapped up in this. So this battle was going on. I wasn't sleeping. My boss and I were completely at odds, mostly her fault, some my fault. That's my ego. But it was just a terrible, terrible time for me, even though I had everything I thought I wanted. So I found community. I thought real estate investing, that sounds practical. I can explain it to my friends. It sounded like something that might be able to get me out of a job. I heard these podcasts. So I go into that and it elevates to multifamily. And I realize along the way, like, yeah, I like real estate, what it does, but what I really enjoy is the interactive piece, the people I meet, who I get to talk to, the brand component of it. I started building kind of a brand in that space. Got on a big show called Bigger Pockets as like the networking guy in real estate, not about my real estate expertise, but how to effectively network. But even that was like, all right, I could only talk about cost segregation so many damn times before I don't want to talk about this anymore. Like it began to feel heavy, but I love the mindset of the investor, the how they think about things, the entrepreneurial side, or just the spirituality. There's so much diversity in the thought, in the mindset of the investor. And I loved exploring that, which led me to more of a generalized podcast and brand. So flash forward, 2021, after 2-3 years in a mastermind that we were together in, Mike, that elevated for me into a higher level of it, if you will. I said, you know what? It's time. And I made the leap, had a little passive income, not enough to cover 400 grand a year, not even enough to cover my expenses, had some savings, figured, I've got a burn rate. And I just had this insatiable belief in what I could create if kind of unchained from the shackles of my job. And to punctuate it, the big vision I had, if I distilled it down to a sentence, was to live with my family anywhere we want in the world for 3+ months. So that's kind of how I got to out of the job. And then we manifested that vision about a year later by moving down to the Dominican Republic, which is where I am now.
And it's been a lot longer than 3 months, bro.
Yeah, I know. Well, we planned on a year. Like we even went like, it's not 3 months. We're going to do a year. And then right at the 1 year mark, we moved here in August 2022. In August 2023, we had flights booked, ready to go back August 31st. I remember the flight date. We had 4 flights back. And we took a quick trip down to Medellin, Colombia. It's like 2 hours, not even, hour and a half, quick flight, easy. And while we're there, 2-3 weeks before this, arrival date back in the US, we were like, we're not done. So we just kind of canceled the flights, talked to the landlord, stayed a while, and we're still here. And we just paid the school tuition for next year. So we'll be here at least another year, probably more like 4 or 5 more years.
Love that. Talk to us about this insatiable belief that you had.
Yeah, it's not
What
something
was that?
not something that I've always had. Imposter syndrome, all the terms, imposter syndrome, lack of belief in self, those ruled me and still do in many ways for the balance of my life. So it really came down to this is where I think community comes in. I had amazing friends and amazing coworkers, and they served me as long as I'm in the bubble of what they all do. But the moment I started to diverge from that, the moment I started to stake my claim to something a little bit different, which initially was real estate, at first there was some support. Oh, you bought a house. It's a good idea. I should do that. Then it's like, wait, you bought another house. What is this? What are you thinking about quitting one day? Like, what are you doing? Then I bought a 16-unit property. Like, dude, like you're going to be, you can go back. My uncle Tony went bankrupt on real estate. You're going to get calls at 2 in the morning. Like all of those voices from what I call my remember when friends were coming up. So these are the folks who know me for who I've been. The moment I diverge from who I've been, they want to grab me and drag me back to that
Mhm.
for safety.
The
Not because-
agent Smiths of life, right? Those
Exactly.
ones that are like, hey, you're waking up from the Matrix. They're like, nah,
Yep. Drag
uh-uh.
you back. But I believe truly there's love in that. I believe there's love in that. Like, hey, man, I'm afraid for you. I want to bring you back. There's fear for them as well because I represent something that they're afraid to do, but there's fear in that. So what I did in joining masterminds was found imagine when people. They're like, I don't care who you've been. Don't know you. Never knew you. But you said this, travel 3+ months with your family anywhere in the world. And you've admitted that where you are right now won't allow you to do that. So the moment I lost my nerve, and it happened a lot on that journey, I set a big goal. Oh, that's scary big. Like, let me retract back to where I've been. These guys are there to say, no, 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 no. You included, Mike. No, no, no. Time to move forward. We know who you say you're going to be, and we believe in that. So having imagine when people around me and limiting my interaction with remember when people was huge. So that's what I think codified the belief I had in myself. Because you start to have wins that you never thought you could have. People around you that are doing things that are normal, that were abnormal 3 months ago for me before I met them. Wait, you live where? You travel abroad? You're a nomad? Like all these things were like, oh, there's a lot of people that do this. Like it's not such a big deal anymore. And that really drew me toward this belief that if I leave, man, I could build what I want to build, which was community myself. I love community. I built a community, brand, a real estate portfolio, all of these things I can build to support myself and my family. So that was the belief.
It's so cool to have you on here because I remember you and I drove back together from Montreal. We were talking offline, like 2018. And I remember you were at that point where you're like, I want to get out, but like you had a lot of limiting beliefs. Your confidence was trash. And now, I look at your journey, especially over the last 3 years, dude, what a 180. Like I was watching you interview Grant Cardone with your
Grant.
buddy there,
Yeah.
with
Grant
Grant.
Washington.
And
Yep.
I was like, look at how far you've come, man. It's freaking amazing. You know what I mean? Like seriously. And you turned something that you were passionate about into a whole career and a whole lifestyle now. And so what I want to pull out for the listeners here is there's that first jump off point where enough is enough. You draw the line in the sand. But you said something that was so important. This is why I'm still part of a bunch of masterminds. When you get in a room of people that are doing the things that you want to do, it starts to normalize it and make it feel like, oh, like everyday people are doing this thing. Like it's not a big deal. And that's how I felt when I got into some of those mastermind groups, right? E tells the story all the time of like, I was the accountant guy hanging out with all these, successful real estate investors. And I'm just like, it just propelled me forward. Cause one of two things happens when you get in those rooms. You either retract and retreat because you're too uncomfortable, or you level up. And for you, man, like your comfort level now, and I'm sure, correct me if I'm wrong, if you still get the butterflies every once in a while when you press the camera, but like your confidence level is at a different pace because you're in your zone of genius and you've just stacked up some of those wins. And now you're living life on your terms, bro.
Oh, 100%. It's funny on the mastermind thing. I joined this GoBundance community because I heard this bearded dude on Bigger Pockets talking about it. So this is a guy who was really interesting to me. He's, real estate investor. He builds a small portfolio. He ends up moving, builds a big podcast, moves to an island where he hosts masterminds and becomes a syndicator. Really interesting. So I joined this community. And look, I've had interactions with Brandon. We text from time to time. He's not best friend, but we're friends or whatever. And I'm looking at like, wow, that's kind of interesting. So if I were to look at me, absent the beard, had a real estate portfolio, built a podcast that's got some decent listenership, moved to an island, host masterminds here, and now I'm a syndicator, or I have that in my portfolio. Like everything absent 1 foot of height and a beard is the same. So to your point, like when you get around these folks and they normalize it, it just becomes almost this like this magnetic draw toward, what you want. I didn't intentionally like, oh, okay, the next step Brandon did was this. That wasn't my thing, but it is interesting to see the parallel of who I resonated with, and then to see the lifestyle that's similar. But yeah, of course, get butterflies. Of course, get nervous at different. I just interviewed Rich Roll on stage in front of 100 people, and then when if the lights first go on, it's like, hope this goes well, hope this works. But man, I said that to a friend today. Like I've never felt, and there's no, I can't even speak to like money or anything. It's not even that. I've just never felt more, I don't know, aligned with what I'm supposed to be doing than I do today. And it took that trip back. You broke something in me. No bullshit. Pardon the language. I drove from that point in Boston when we left each other to Michigan, 15 hours. It was my 40th birthday, October 1st, the very next day. And I was in tears. I was listening to the same song over and over again, Secrets by One Republic, in tears because it was the low. It was the break. It was the breakthrough or breakdown that created the breakthrough. And there was a lot on that conversation that you and I had for 5 hours or whatever it was from Montreal that created that. So it was a breakdown of who I was and building a new confident self on the other side of that.
I love that. That was your, I'm gonna break the cocoon, your
My Jerry
butterfly
Maguire
moment,
moment.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you know what's funny? Also, what I feel over time, and I noticed this with a lot of people, is how your physiology of your body changes when you go into life of purpose. Your eyes are different. You have the spark in your eyes. Your smile is bigger, right? Your shoulders are more back. Your demeanor, because again, like your body knows what's going on, right? And it like appreciates the fact that you're acting through to who you always known you were meant to be. And he changes, right? Dave Conway, our coach, he has a picture that he shows all the time of like him broke and then him after, and you can just see it. Like his eyes are different and everything else. So I love that you talked about this show and all the things that you, all the great people you got to interview. So I would love for you to give us, because again, guys, he has had some great people on the show, interviewed a lot of great people. So give us a rundown of your favorite people and your favorite things that you learned from them or conversation you had.
Yeah, one of my favorite ones ever, and still to this day, is a guy named Sean Casey. Sorry, Mike. He's you're not a big sports guy, but he was a hitting coach for the Yankees last year, so he's a rival to your Red Sox. But 3-time All-Star, 12-year MLB player, one of only like maybe I think it's like 200 players to have a lifetime batting average over 300, like a significant ball player. And we still keep in touch. We text all of this stuff, but he just really, really reinforced the power of building habits and how you retract to that point. So when you're on the ultimate stage, he was talking about 2 outs, game 6 or game 5, down 3-1 in the series to the Cardinals in the Cardinal Stadium, 2 outs, top 9. If he's out, series over. 2 strikes, quick on him. Steps out of the box, the crowd is going absolutely crazy. And the way he talked about taking that moment and going through like, wait a minute, breathe. He knows his breath ritual. He's got a certain way he holds the bat. He has a certain stance, like going through all the little machinations, if you will, of all the things he's done, hours and hours under the stadium in the cage and going through these breathing exercises, stepping back into the box and putting one almost through the outfield wall for a stand-up double. was a really, really cool story for me that I always remember. Like, you retract to your your worst habits. So if your worst habits are good, then you're gonna retract back to those. Those will serve you when you're in the thick of it. So for me, one of those habits is service. It's a mindset and a habit. I've learned that when I'm in the place of getting, it's because I'm really, really in a groove of giving. Whatever that means, my time, my energy, money, you name it. In fact, when I'm feeling especially tight with money, I think about like what's the best feeling with money? What is the best feeling? It's not when I buy something, it's literally when I give it away. So if I'm at a Starbucks line and I'm feeling tight on money or I'm feeling tight in general, that's the time to like, let me get the person behind me. Just give it away. It always just increases my energy. So for me, I go into moments of feeling scarce. That scarce means I'm going into get mode. How do I extract something? Like my time's more valuable than this. I got to stop giving it away. Like, and the second I kind of say, just chill, be in service. How can you be in service here? Doesn't mean I have to like give all my time away or take calls that I normally wouldn't and take them away from my family, but just being in service is a habit I retract to that creates so much abundance in my life. So Sean Casey he was huge. Like, and again, I love staying in touch with him. I loved Andrew Bustamante, former CIA spy. This guy just like, he just blew my mind on everything. And he is just an
He's
incredible
wicked cool too.
guy. Oh my God.
He just looks cool. He's just cooler and cool. You know what I mean?
I
Like
mean,
he's
you're
one of those
former
people that you're like, yeah,
deep
like
cover CIA spy. I mean, talk
yeah,
about the
like
best line
how
ever.
how cool, how much cooler can you get? You know? What was that like? Were you like intimidated by him? Because I remember when we had Chris Voss on,
Oh, yeah, I've had
which
Chris
has
on.
had a similar, like just a similar, and then reading his stories. I remember I was petrified. Like the first couple of minutes, I couldn't even speak. Right? Like I'm like I don't even know what to ask.
Dude, I do
I love
hours
that.
and hours and hours and hours of prep for these people just because I enjoy it and I want to put on the best possible show that I can. Moments before, it's always like, what's it going to be like? How's it going to be? And then the moment, like I said, Rich roll, like right before the cameras go on, you have that little butterfly. But I'll be honest with you, the moment, whether it's Tom Bilyeu on stage in front of 300 people, Jesse Itzler on stage, Exhibit I interviewed on stage in San Francisco in front of a lot of guys worth a lot of money. Who else? Chris Voss, Tim Grover. I mean, some of these massive names. When the light goes on, that's my stage. That's not theirs anymore. And I feel very confident. And it's not that I'm owning it. Like, it's on them. The focus is on them, but I know more about their story or things that they've forgotten about their story sometimes than they do. And so the depth that I can go to and the information I have that I'm armed with, like the preparation, again, you kind of retract back to your best habit or your worst habits. My worst habit is being over prepared. So I leverage that to eradicate. And again, it's my space. I wasn't born with pigment. I don't have any height. My teeth are too big for my head. There's a lot of things that I don't have, right? But one thing I do is the ability to bring people in and have a great conversation and lean into this curiosity I was blessed with by God or whomever. So I own it. That's my spot. I'm really, really good there. And I don't have I don't feel at all any nervousness when I'm interviewing somebody. Even if the interview doesn't go great, it's like, is what it is. On to the next one. So
For sure. So, what did you feel a little bit more like a spy afterwards, and what did you learn from him? Like, did you just go around the house just doing
truthfully,
roles
so
and just
here's the thing with podcasts I think people miss. We all focus on reach, audience, and the cool guest gets us the bigger audience. And that can be true. And I do too. Don't get me wrong. We want better reach. But man, I'll tell you, the most fun part to me about podcasting is the relationships you build with guests. And when you're starting out, when I started out, it's, people that I know, might be Mike or people that, I have in my space that I respect and admire, and they're really, really great at what they do. And then, Mike knows this one guy and he connects me to him. That's an author. Like, oh, that's interesting. And that author knows the next guy and so on and so forth up the chain. And the game, if you will, of building relationships with these folks is to me the most fun. So an example, Grant Cardone. So I get Grant Cardone on my podcast. What I love doing after a guest that really hits me is I love buying them a gift. Now, what I don't do is get them a Tribe of Millionaires t-shirt and bracelet. Like, that's just promotional. That's not a gift. I look for something that's unique to them that I can provide them that's custom made with nothing to do with my branding or my name or anything like that. So Grant Cardone is on my podcast. Now, Grant is in another stratosphere. I'm not going to be texting with Grant Cardone. I don't have any images of grandeur there. But there was a lady, Sherry Hamilton, that's his like number 2. And she was awesome, genuinely awesome. Like, she was just attentive and helpful and everything. So I don't know, I stalked her a bit on Facebook and Instagram. It's like, this is interesting. She loves concerts, loves going to concerts. Saw a whole bunch. And they keep calling her the chairwoman. Oh, the chairwoman, the chairwoman. So I went out and bought her, it's like $150 custom wood engraved plaque that said the chairwoman rocks, Sherry Hamilton, with a little note on there, kind of a double entendre, rocks and rocks because she loves concerts, and sent that to her. No expectation of anything in return. And I do that with the guests that really hit me. So Andrew Bustamante, Cale Owen, Tim Grover, whomever. I send them a gift that's custom, cost me some money, not to say, hey, be my friend, but just to show a level of appreciation, to be in service. Now, does Andrew Bustamante, actually he does, we keep in touch. He's actually coming down here soon. Does Tim Grover reach out to me? No. I mean, and again, no images of that or no desire for that. But man, like those people, when they come on my show, they get a great interview from me. I show that I did my research. Did this with Pace Morby. He's like, dude, I've never been asked about where I place in the 12 children, 12 siblings that I've had. Like, what's my place and how that's informed my life today? I've never been asked that. I'm always asked about my first Subject 2 deal. So we exchange numbers. We keep in touch. I connect them to a few different people that were other guests. That game of leveraging relationships, helping other people win by connecting them to each other, that's the game in podcast that's probably returned me way more than any 250,000 viewed show or whatever it might be, or any ego stroke I get from being on stage interviewing somebody big. The relationship building part is, I think, what people miss in podcasting. Like you can do really, really well just building a network of amazing guests. And those guests will refer you the big guests that you want when you're in service.
So good.
I don't know what that does for you, but figured I'd share.
No, it's phenomenal, right? One of the things that I've been focused on a lot, honestly, since I built this business, this portfolio and everything is, it was never about like getting wealthy and, the love of real estate or whatever. It was a vehicle for time freedom, right? And a lot of the listeners are going to know my story with my son being sick and everything else. So I am hyper intentional with how I spend my time, and I call it like my perfect week. And I review it regularly, at least quarterly, and I'm constantly trying to refine and adjust how I structure my weeks, because like the bucket list trips and all these things are great and those will be amazing memories for the rest of my life. But when I'm 90 years old, hopefully some point sitting on the rocking chair, my life is really an accumulation of my average weeks. So how can I be hyper intentional with how I structure those weeks so I'm getting the most out of every single week that I'm out here? Not just waiting for those magic trips and magic moments for different things. Those are part of it. But, I see somebody like you that, you and Sylvia uprooted the family, moved there. Like you're very intentional with your time. So I'm curious for you, how do you think about like structuring your life now and managing your weeks and like what's putting you in flow and just being hyper intentional with your time?
The more I can be in communication with others in a week, the better for me. And that might be being on a podcast, hosting a podcast, content creation, but I'll give you a sense of it. So the elements of my perfect week have always been, I don't want an alarm clock. So I never, ever wake up to an alarm clock. I wake up at anywhere from 4:30 to 7, right? Like it really depends on the day. I wake up when I wake up. If I feel like staying in bed and trying to fall back asleep, I do. If not, whatever. But I get up when I get up. We always do the kids in the morning. We do, get them ready for school. So I make them eggs. We hang out for a little bit. They were playing soccer this morning, that kind of thing. So that's always going to happen. We drop them off. My wife and I go to the gym at 8:30 a.m. every day, Monday through Friday, 3 days a week. We have a trainer. The other days is sort of whatever we want to do. So I don't start the day till 10. So 10 a.m. is when I start my day. I've always wanted that kind of freedom. And it's funny, if you listen to a guy like Alex Hormozy, for instance, he says, wake up at 4 and grind to noon, right? Alex Hormozy doesn't have kids. So when you have kids in there, right? Like my morning, I need that space. I need like a little bit of space for me, go to the gym. I need to decompress because everything's about them for a period of time. So 10 a.m. is when I start my day. From 10 to about 4 each day is some element of being here. So it could be I'm creating content through a newsletter. Could be I'm on a podcast. Could be that I'm hosting a podcast. Could be that I'm researching a podcast guest that's going to be coming on. Or I'm just creating content for my personal brand, YouTube, Instagram, so on and so forth. Or I'm engaging with the audience across platforms. On Instagram, I get 100 to 200 DMs a day, and I try to reply to all of them every day if I can. Don't always get to it, but I get to most. So my day is really structured from like 10 to 4 around making sure that I am in this flow that I believe I have of just being in connection with others. That's how I serve. The weekends are open for the kids. We have soccer on Saturday. Sunday, we do something. We go to the beach typically, or we'll go to my wife's uncle's place, something like that. But that is honestly, to your point, that is my perfect week. I have 2 touches with my Emerge community, GoBundance Emerge community, which is Tuesday evening. I always get on a call with the newest group for onboarding. And Wednesday afternoon, I interview live for our community, a GoBundance member, an entrepreneur, on a topic. Could be wealth, could be relationships, could be health. So I spend kind of 2 hours in my community every week, and the rest of the time is dedicated to creation, email marketing, whatever it might be, just me creating and letting all this stuff out of me, because that's what I stifled and kept inside for 21 years. Got to modify. Boss doesn't like this much energy. Chill out. Do it this way. React this way. Email them that way. Like, that was my entire adult life. So now it's just like daily release of creativity. That's my number one priority after my family.
Mm. I love that daily release of creativity.
Has to be.
Um,
Has to be.
yeah. So how do you cultivate balance? We talked about this on off air. This is a question that we love asking, or at least I love asking as of lately. Because I think a lot of people listen to this and it's like, oh, that sounds. So how do you cultivate balance? What does
I
that look
think
like?
balance should be, if you want to truly, like, so let's define. I think what most people mean balance is like health, wealth, relationships, right? Like, I want to spend time as a dad or husband or mom or wife with my family. I want to, dedicate time to my business, my job, whatever it might be, and I want to make sure I take care of myself, physically or emotionally with health. And I get that. I think if you want to shoot for that balance between the three, do it over the course of a lifetime. So, like, at the end of life, when your days are numbered, go back and then figure out, like, did I hit it? Did I go a third, a third, a third over the course of my lifetime? I just think there's seasons, man. Like there's times when I go into deep grind work mode, and it's not because I feel the need to, but I'm overrun with creation, ideation, business problems. I'm going through something right now where we had to let a couple employees go in our production company, just not the right fits and everything. So yeah, there's a little bit more focus on the business side. When my kids were born, that was all family, right? When we're on vacation or after a certain hour or on weekends, like, I try to dedicate that to family. But there's times on weekends where I'm like, I got stuff to do. Not because I feel like, oh, if I don't do this, I'm gonna lose. It's just, I really need to unleash this. I've got to take care of this, right? I have, so I think balance is a lifelong pursuit, not a day-to-day, week-to-week pursuit. I just don't think that's real. And I think people need to give themselves, me included, permission to put down the fact that some nights are late, some mornings are early. Sometimes I can't go to the gym. Sometimes I can't bring the kids to school. My wife needs to do that. And there's other times when I feel guilty the other way, like, God, I haven't done enough work this week. I intended to do some stuff, but I just kind of screwed off and played with the kids or whatever. Like, that kind of goes both ways, if you will. And there's guilt on both sides of it, or there can be. But I think balance is a lifelong pursuit, not a day-to-day pursuit, not a week-to-week, not a month-to-month pursuit. If you want to be planful, I guess, what goals do you have this quarter, and lean into that area of where you're going to be imbalanced. So I'm all family this quarter. Cool. This quarter, I got to kind of get back to some work stuff. Cool. But even that feels more structured than I would want it. I just think you pursue a lifelong balance objective, and you'll be great.
I love that. And I guess again, this is what I keep asking it, right? Like I think overall is the team that we're getting is a similar answer to this question. And everybody has their own shape and shade to it. But it's always kind of like along those lines. And the biggest part for me, for our listeners, is that piece of understanding that giving yourself grace.
Yeah.
That some days it's not gonna look perfect, no matter how regimented your life is, or not regimented, it's just not gonna be perfect, right? I want to be mindful of your time, but I
No, I'm
wanted to
good.
ask
But
you.
real quick on that point, because, like, I think about the
Yeah.
time we were talking about with Mike, when I was riding with Mike back from Montreal and there was no balance in my life then. Like, there was a major shift in identity that I had to make as a guy making almost a half mil, at some points, maybe a half mil in income, taking care of a family, 21 years dedicated to this company. Like, I wasn't a father and a husband, a present father and husband in that time. I'm not proud of it, but that's the reality. Like, that's a major shift. Like, when you're living it, it just sort of like day by day stacks up. But then some people say to me, like, holy crap. And then I think about it, like, if this wasn't me, somebody challenged me to do that once. Like, why don't you write your story as if it's somebody else's? And when you do that, you're like, Jesus, like, I did some big things. Like, don't see it because it's like your kid's growing. Like, your grandparents see the kids every 6 months. Oh my God, they're so much bigger. You're like, oh, I guess. Yeah, I see them every day. Same thing. I see my journey every day. But when I think back to that time, wow, the balls I had, to do what I did and then quit the job. Like, that took something, man. There was no balance, none.
Yeah.
That's my wife.
I love
That's
that.
that's what I was
Anyway.
getting at. And I think
Yeah.
before we pivot, I think this is gonna help a lot of people because when we talk about the work-life balance, I completely agree. I call it work-life integration. Like, I love what I do and I don't want to stop doing what I'm doing. Like, I'm not escaping from anything anymore. Like, I'm in flow. I like doing what I'm doing. And there are seasons of pushing and building and everything else. But you guys have great alignment and communication from what I see on the outside, you and Sylvia,
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And if
we
you
do.
don't have that, that's when it can really cause a lot of friction at home if both spouses or significant others aren't on the same page. And then it becomes this battle back and forth of, well, I need your time. And you know what I mean? And to
Yeah.
me, if you can create that alignment, and I am by no means, the perfect husband at all. But over time, as we've, left our jobs and navigated the whole entrepreneurship thing, the communication and the direction of where we've gonna go is huge, right? And it's not I don't get my balls busted anymore if I work late here and there, or if I gotta do what I gotta do, it's not a guilt trip, where in the past it was like, "You need to be more present," whatever. Creating that alignment of where we're going and the life that we wanna build together, that's everything.
Can I give you a hack on that? Something that's worked for us really, really well, and credit Rob Dyrdek on this. I'm a people pleaser at heart. So when my wife says, "Hey, next Friday, this," I just, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I might fully know, or I'll look later and see like, ooh, I got a conflict at the time that she needs me to do this. Like, I'll figure it out. I'll disappoint somebody next Friday. Like, I'll worry about it then. And the thing for her is like, why don't you just tell me? I'm like, because if I tell you, you might get mad or annoyed, and I don't even want to experience a little bit of that. So I have a personal assistant, a VA, virtual assistant. And what we agreed to do was, hey, his name is Mark. Mark, send Sylvia my calendar at the beginning of the week and then every day. So, like, here's the calendar for the week, Sylvia. You can see where he is, what he's doing. And every day, send her like that day. And then if I have travel, send it to her 1 month in advance. So, those are the 3 rules that he abides by. And then Sylvia doesn't come to me anymore for what needs to be on my schedule. She goes to Mark. So I literally get to be this puppet that just abides by whatever's on my schedule. My wife gets what she wants. She doesn't have me just trying to people please and drop something on there and I'll figure it out later. She and Mark work out what I do and then I go do it. Hey, Marco, hey, boss, tomorrow, just a reminder you're not doing that because your wife needs you to do this. That hack has saved us countless arguments, countless arguments. So anyone use that if you want. $7.50 an hour. Incredible.
I literally got the text from my assistant today because we have a date night tonight,
Yeah.
and literally about that. I'm like, "I'm gonna disappoint somebody because I have a 4 o'clock meeting," and she goes, "Nope, I already talked to her. I moved the meeting, like, you're good to go." Because
There you go.
that
Yep.
is real, right? So, I love that
She's like,
idea.
don't forget to shower. You have a date. But what I love, and for those listening, there are not people pleasers because I'm a huge people pleaser. You don't understand that amount of energy, mental energy, and mental struggle that Jamie saved himself. Because I go through those moments, and not wanting to disappoint the people that you love. Because what you do is you loop through the conversation in your mind, or at least I do, over and over, and be like, shit, I have to schedule this, I have to cancel that. And you're like, oh no, I don't want to do it. I'll do it tomorrow. And then it just weighs on you.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
again, if you're not a people's pleaser, you don't understand it. But if you're listening, you are like us, you understand how big of a hack that is. What I want to touch on, Jamie, is that it's a natural talent that you have, but it's something that can be learned because it's a muscle, right? It's the question of how do you become a master at building business relationship or building relationship, kind of like what you touched on like the connecting people, right? Like you're a master connector. So if we're somebody that's like, I know a lot of people and I want to get better at it, I just don't know how to do it, but I know I could do it. What would you tell them? Like, how do you get better?
Yeah, it's a great question. I do believe that there are natural connectors that just kind of have this energy, but absolutely, absolutely you can, yeah, absolutely you can build the skill. So a few things. The first thing that's jumping to mind, especially if you're in a networking situation and you're introverted, what I would tell you to do, because you're like, I want to go meet people, I don't know how, is put something in your hands, pen, piece of paper, something. You have the Ricky Bobby thing. What do I do with my hands? Like, it's real. Like, especially if you're nervous about approaching people, right? Yeah. Like, if you have something in your hands, this is a selfie stick, right? You have something in your hands, it just kind of anchors you. A book, a pencil, doesn't matter. And you just feel like you've got something like armor between you and the other person when you go meet them. So that's just a small tip on that I've seen work out for people. But I think connector is very, very simple. So the first thing I would do if you're in an interaction with somebody and you want to, build a relationship with them, The first thing I wouldn't do, the worst thing you could do, the worst question that you could possibly ask somebody that you want to try to build a relationship with is, how can I add value to you? How can I help you? Because the person on the other side now has to come up with and figure out what your skills are, what they need, whether or not those things overlay, and then decide if you've got a role in what they need, right? So if you want to ask a better question, the question might be, what is the number one thing that you're working on, focused on, worried about right now? And then they'll give you an answer, and then you can decide if you've got somebody in your network, a skill, whatever it might be, a tip, a hack, something you heard on a podcast that you can share with them. But the better way to build connection is truly listen to that person and start to develop these theories or theses, whatever it is in your mind on, oh, you know who they should meet is this person. You know who they should meet is that person. Or, oh, I know, I saw this, I had this site, this podcast, whatever, that I should send to them. And then honestly, it's a matter of keeping up on that. So like if I'm talking to Mike and Mike's talking about struggles in being a dad, you know what, I've just been out of balance as a dad recently, we have a good conversation about that. And then 3 months later, I'm listening to a podcast, and at minute 43, there's this really cool little segment, 2 minutes long, about this guy talking about being a dad and something that pivoted his life. I'm going to text Mike on 2 levels. Hey man, thinking of you and sending you this podcast, but even better service. Go to minute 43. Don't have to listen to the whole thing. Go to minute 43, listen for 3-4 minutes. Like, all I'm asking of Mike is to make a 3 to 4 minute commitment of time on something that he's looking to get better at anyway. Like, that's how you know people are thinking about you. Now, if you want a tactic, like how do I keep up with all these people? Here's a great one. I do this sometimes, not as consistent as I should. Go into your phone. You guys delete your text or you keep them? I keep all mine.
I keep them.
Yeah.
I keep them all.
Scroll all the way to the bottom.
For
It'll go back
forever.
about a year, right? Whoever's the last 3, or maybe not exactly the last 3, but like pick 3 of like your oldest texts, whoever they might be, and just shoot them a text. Hey man, hey lady, whatever. Thinking of you. It's been a while since we've chatted. Just wanted to check in and make sure everything's okay. So whoever you were talking, if you do it right now, if you go back a year or whatever it is that your texts allow you to, I'm going to do it with you guys. I'm going to take a look at this. If I go back in my texts and I just scroll forever and let it go all the way back, you're going to come to a point where there's somebody that you haven't talked to in a long time. Mike Finley. It's a guy that I grew up with. I should reach out to him. Ben Leibovich. You guys remember Ben Leibovich from Bigger Pockets? Haven't talked to him in over a year. My nephew is back there. Brad Stagel. I remember Brad. Brad's out of Peoria, Illinois. He's building a thing in Belize. I should check in on that. He's building a project, a short-term rental project in Belize, right? Like, you're going to find people a year ago that you can check in with, serve, drop them a nice line, gratitude, whatever it might be. You don't have to get on a call with them. You don't have to take more of your time, but if you're looking for ways to connect with people more, just go back a year or however long that is in your texts and see who's back there. Grab a few. You got a couple, Mike?
I just realized Mike Michalowicz was a year ago to the day, and I know he's got a new book.
Mine
Got a
just
new
keeps
book.
going down. I don't know what's happening, but it just keeps scrolling. I don't know what's happening.
You'll be in 2014 before you know it.
It's just going down, That is hilarious.
Yeah, Mike McCall. Imagine if he hears from you today, Mike. Just, hey man, you have a book coming out, right? Anything you need,
You should
I'm
come
gonna
on the
grab
show.
a copy.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's all. You don't have to get in a call. You don't have to spend more time. He's going to remember you. He's going to think of you. You still doing the STR stuff? Man, I met this guy. Do you know him? His name is X. You'd be like, I've been trying to reach that guy forever. Oh, happy to make the connection. If you need the get, that's the get. But more than that, just that energy of giving.
That's so
it'll
good,
serve you in
dude.
the long run.
Thank you for sharing that, because I'm naturally introverted and I love meeting these people. But after a certain point, it's almost awkward to follow up, because I'm like, oh shit, I haven't talked to this person in 5 months, 6 months, 12 months for Michalowicz, right? Like, just like you said, some little value add of like, what is going on in their life? How can I add some value? And just say, hey, you know what? I was thinking of you. Hope you're doing great. Found this resource,
Yeah. Move your thumb over to IG. That's all the effort. Like, this is literally it. Go to IG. Look at their Instagram page. What have they been talking about recently? And it's like, hey man, I saw your post on this. That was really cool. Hope you're doing well. Bustamante, I do this with, man. I reach out to him. I saw him on Diary of a CEO. I saw the clip of it and I sent it to him like, dude, this is amazing. Awesome. Congrats. He's like, oh, thanks. Whatever. That's it. Just keeping up with him in that way. So something like that will help quite a bit if you're looking to stay connected and have that connector energy. I hope that answers your question, Nate.
No, it does. It does. And it's also the concept of like loving on people. Because again, like, guys, if you think about it, the opposite, how awesome would you feel if somebody sent you a thing and it's like, hey man, like I saw this interview of you, or I saw this article that you posted, or I saw this thing was awesome. I need nothing. I just wanted to tell you you're amazing. Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah. By the way, condition. You may
Yeah.
not reply to that because you
Yeah,
might
no,
be like,
nothing,
oh,
right?
that's weird. I haven't heard from this person. And they may have the same thing. So no expectation of anything to come back from that. It's just something, if you do it on a daily basis, you do the numbers. Jesse Itzler talks about this. Like over a year, you'll do that with 9,000 people or whatever the 3 times 365 is, right? Like you'll do that with so many people that you're just putting a positive vibe out into the world. And God, if just on the numbers, 1% of those people are going to come back to you and you'll maybe form a new relationship, a partnership, get a connection from them. Something will come back to you, but just stay in that energy.
Yeah. I love that. What do you guys want to do? Because we could keep ranting on.
I don't
Mike,
care. Whatever you
I'll
guys want.
let yeah, same.
How,
So we usually cap it right now to be respectful of people's time. My schedule is free. I know Mike has a date.
now,
So
what I will, I want to get into the last question, but more so, and this just came to me, so I just want to ask this. What do you think your biggest awareness was over the last, say, 5 years as you radically changed your life? Like, if you had to boil it down, what do you think your biggest awareness was as you were going through that? Because again, dude, it's just so cool to see like such change that you've had. And I think so many people want that. And they're like, I don't know how. I don't know how.
There's so much here. So let me start with this. I think that in order to have just on stats, and I'm going to guess your audience probably mostly W-2 looking to quit. Is that
Yes.
fair? Okay. So let me speak to that because I think that's what's coming up for me anyway. 80% of people are unfulfilled with their work. So most people don't want to do what they do and they love this idea of entrepreneurship. And I would say it, and I think you would too. Like I work harder, worry more ever in entrepreneurship, but it's a righteous, fulfilling worry. It's a righteous, fulfilling work. And I heard Cody Sanchez just say this, like you don't retire from a life that you love, right? So that's what I think entrepreneurship can be. But the one thing that I think I got lost in, especially when you think about how we're institutionalized in some ways. So you go to school for 17 years, 13 years, kindergarten through 12, and then 4 years of college, maybe longer. 17, that's a big block, most of your life to that point. Then you get a job for 8, 10, 12, 20, however many years. So when you're at this point, many people hit this mid 30s, maybe going to 40, where it's like, all right, there's something's got to change in my life. The feeling is like, all right, 17, 15, the next chunk. I got to know what that is before I do anything. Before any action is taken, I need to know exactly what it's going to be because I only got one more in me, right? Like I did the school thing, I did the job thing, one more in me. Maybe not consciously, but that's kind of subconscious what we do. So we're frozen. I know I was frozen in what to do. Well, real estate seems interesting, but what if this happens? I don't know if that's it. I really like this. What if that's not it? So the realization for me, especially, and it's become absolutely real, especially after leaving the job, it's proven itself out, is whatever version 1.0 is of what you think the next 20 years will be, in a year, 2 years will be version 12.0. You have to embrace the pivot. It's coming in some way, shape, or form. Most of us think that pivot means that you go and then you retract back to zero to go in a different direction, but that's not the case. If you're watching this on video, I would say it this way. This is mine. I started in real estate. I'm going to invest in I'm going to own 100 units. So many of us said that, right? But 100 doors. So I start to go down that path and it goes like this. There's all these things that you're learning in those 100 units that you're pursuing. Then you're looking at it at a while like, I hate to admit this, but I don't like all this. Actually, I don't like most of this. But you know what I do like? This was me. I like talking to people in this space. So what if I build a networking brand? And now I haven't gone back to my chest here, right? I haven't gone back to zero. I'm going to go down this networking brand thing and it gets wide again. And there's all these things I learned. Then at a certain point, you're like, you know what? As I said before, sick of talking about cost seg. So, but I like the mindset podcast kind of thing. It's kind of cool. So it does this until I figure out what I don't want and go from there. And I'm in a season now, 3 years in, where, man, I thought the next 20 years were figured out, but I'm on the cusp of another pivot. It came when I moved here. There's a personal brand in me. There's a whole international thing that I'm doing that I never thought would be fun, but never knew would be fun. But I'm having so much fun leaning into vlogging and YouTube and all these other aspects that I didn't have any visibility on a year or two ago, right? So one is the pivot. You're going to pivot. You need to embrace that. It's not going to be exactly as you plan with whatever you wanted to start with. Mike, you started multifamily. Look where you are now. You're the furthest thing, well, not furthest, but you're far enough from it, right? You've got brands, you've got short-term, you've got boutique, all these things, but because you started something. The reason we were afraid to pivot, by the way, I believe, is not fear of failure. It's fear of being judged for that failure. Everybody else being right, that your deviation from who you've been was a massive, quote unquote, failure. But entrepreneurs crave failure because failure teaches us what to do next. Employees are punished by failure. School students, punished. F, big red, you're an F student. That's a bad thing in the W-2 education world. In the entrepreneur world, failure is like, how do I get there as fast as possible so I learn and go from there? So that's one big revelation. The other one for me, and I'll be succinct with this because I know I'm getting long, is more recent. There's a quote by Thoreau that says, the mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation and go to their grave with their song still left in them. And through some in-depth work or whatever, I've learned that my biggest fear in the world is not death. It's not my kids, God forbid something happened to them. It's not failing. It's not losing money, although I wouldn't want to do that stuff. It truly is going to the grave with a song still left in me to some extent. And I'm unpacking that more because certain songs have been sung. I'm married to my dream woman. I have amazing kids. Those are amazing songs. But the potential that I feel I have to influence and change lives or whatever with this voice I was born with, like going to my grave with that song still left in me scares the shit out of me. And I never, ever understood that until recently doing some deep work. Like, that's what it is. If I die and I'm not done, whatever done means for me, if it's even possible, as close to done as possible, that scares the hell out of me. So those are two revelations that I think have pivoted a lot of things for me.
So
That's
good.
super powerful. That's like your fear is going to the grave with like a Bohemian Rhapsody still inside of you, right? Like that level of a masterpiece. And again, like I believe that we all have that, right? Like we all have that Bohemian Rhapsody in us, and so many people continue to sing the songs that have been sung for so long that you're tired of. And you have this genius inside of you, this like
Every one of us.
untouchable thing that like it sounds crazy, but like listen to Bohemian Rhapsody as I'm saying that, right? Because the idea of that concept of that song at the time and everything that is in it
Today,
is just
insane.
wild, right?
Yeah.
It's wild. It was a 6-minute songs when types like now people drop 6-minute songs all the time, but at the time the songs and things were just wild, right?
Yeah.
And I love that. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that.
So those are two revelations for me for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love
Powerful.
it, man. Well, the last question that we ask all of our guests, and I will modify this for you, is what is your number one secret to success?
I think it is ready. I'll call this ready, fire, aim. All learning, all growth happens when you go go out of your comfort zone. And the only way to do that is to act. I always say that people ask about like getting a mentor. I say, well, the first thing you do is ask a question of somebody. But if you want that mentor to pay attention, then act on the feedback, act on what you ask, and then you acquire the mentor. That's act, ask, act, acquire, right? So action. And again, I just saw Cody Sanchez speak. I love Cody. I've always been a fan of hers. I've seen her speak for years, and she's getting so dialed in. And she said to an employee of hers in the crowd, what do I always say? And the employee said, reduce time to action. That was the big Cody Sanchez mantra. How do we reduce time to action? So for anyone listening, for me, that's been my thing. Like I leave, and so do all the successful people I see, leave a wake of broken glass and spilled milk and everything behind us. Like you see like you said, you're killing it, podcast it. It's all good. I can't tell you how much shit is on the cutting room floor, how many people I've run over, what tire marks that are on the shirts of people. Like just because when you act, you're going to learn what you don't want. You're going to learn what you're good, not good at. And there's going to be stuff that's left behind, and you have to be okay with that. But imperfect action trumps perfect inaction all day. So I think it's ready, fire, aim.
Love that. And before I let you go, where can the folks listening learn more about you, follow you, check out all the good stuff you got going on, man?
Yeah, I'll give you two. So Instagram at the Jamie Gruber. If you're interested in potentially working more with me in my community, it's gobundance.emerge.com.
Love it. Love it. Well, Jamie, appreciate you, bro. Thank you for coming on here. Keep doing all the greatness that you've got going on. And for the listeners out there, appreciate you guys. Hope you have an amazing week. We will talk to you soon. Hey, STR Nation, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. And in the comments, let us know what topics you want us to cover on upcoming episodes, and we'll make sure to get that in the books for you. And if you really want to learn how to launch, automate, and scale your short-term rental business, if you want to go deeper, then check out our free masterclass at strsecrets.com.